Japan has long operated beyond the pacifist constraints of its post-war constitution, but a growing and more assertive China accelerates the development of its offensive capabilities by Tokyo. Japan's fundamental strategic imperatives are shaped by economic concerns. The islands are poor in resources and therefore dependent on imports. This shaped the Yoshida Doctrine after World War II, in which Japan largely outsourced its national security to the United States while focusing its energy on national economic development. With Japan becoming less confident in its dependence on the United States, the same vulnerability plus now Tokyo has played a more active role in its neighborhood. Japan's increased economic and security engagement in the Indo-Pacific offers a regional alternative to China for the countries of Southeast Asia. But this policy is far from being to the taste of the major powers of the region like China and South Korea. Overcoming the Yoshida Doctrine. Just as Chinese President Xi Jinping pushed China beyond Deng Xiaoping's doctrine, which called on China to avoid showing its strength while rebuilding internal power, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sought to go beyond the strategy adopted by Japan on its post-war Prime Minister Shigeru Yoshida. Although several factors shaped the evolution of Japan's defense, Tokyo today is driven by changes in Chinese international behavior and the growth in power of the Middle Empire. The Chinese economy has far surpassed that of Japan, leaving the island nation far behind the United States and China in national GDP. China is rapidly increasing its technological capabilities, challenging Japan in areas of traditional strength, from semiconductors to high-speed trains. China has increased its investment and trade footprint across the region through its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, supplanting Japan's soft power gains. The development of the Chinese Navy over the past decade has overtaken that of Japan. And the People's Liberation Army Navy now operates freely in the East and South China Seas as well as in the West Pacific. China's construction of man-made islands in the South China Sea as well as the rebalancing of the Philippines from the United States to China increase the risk of disrupting Japan's vital maritime supply lines. The development of Chinese ports and investments crossing South Asia and East Africa are also creating additional areas where China could interfere with Japanese supply lines. Japan's economic and diplomatic response. Japan uses its identity as both a democracy and a regional second-largest economy to strengthen its position as a viable alternative for regional leadership. Despite its history of war, Japan is widely regarded as a non-threatening partner in much of Asia, except of course by neighboring China as well as the Korea. In response to China's growing global presence, former Prime Minister Abe traveled to Kenya to launch his Free and Open Indo-Pacific Initiative in 2016, which focuses on establishing economic, social and security connections in East Africa. Abe's statement followed China's 2015 launch of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and while Tokyo is also planning to join the Chinese initiative, it ultimately decided to offer an alternative source of lending and development aid. Japan also played a leading role in the revision of the Trans-Pacific Partnership after the withdrawal of the United States in 2017, strengthening these trade, regional agreements through the renamed Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Partnership Trans-Pacific. Tokyo has stepped up diplomacy, aid and cooperation across Southeast Asia between the Pacific Islands and the Indian Ocean Basin in an effort to counter Chinese advances and strengthen the economic position and safety of Japan. In 2017, Japan helped revive the defunct Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, also known as the Quad, comprising Japan, Australia, India and the United States. Japan supplied the Philippines and Vietnam with new Coast Guard vessels and relaxed its self-imposed restrictions on arms exports. Tokyo therefore actively urges Japanese companies to reduce their dependence on China and move their activities to Southeast Asia. Vietnam currently stands out as a privileged location for its investors. The redefinition of self-defense. The Japanese government has frequently reinterpreted Article 9 of the country's post-war constitution, which renounces war and theoretically requires that Japan have only a defensive military capacity to avoid repeating imperial actions that led to World War II. Abe sought to formally amend Article 9 by rewriting the constitution, but his attempts were continually sidelined by more immediate priorities or a lack of consensus. But despite its failure to amend Article 9, a more liberal interpretation of self-defense has allowed Japan to make further substantial progress in reorienting its military towards emerging geopolitical threats. Over the years, Japan has revised what it considers offensive versus defensive weapon systems. Japan has added air-to-air refueling capabilities, approves acquisition of long-range cruise missiles, and is currently discussing development of anti-satellite systems to protect its space resources following the announcement by Japan joint of the cancellation of these plans to purchase and deploy the Aegis Ashore missile defense system to be manufactured in the United States. Elements of the Abe ruling Liberal Democrats (PLD) have reignited talks over acquiring the capability of Japan to hit foreign missile sites, something once taboo under the constitution. Japan has already started the process of updating its Isamo-class helicopter carrier destroyers. In June, the United States approved the sale of 105 aircraft of this type to Japan, including 42 short takeoff and vertical landing variants, which will bring the Japanese total at 147. The second largest F-35 fleet in the world. Japan is also building an airbase on Marge Island off Kagoshima Prefecture for the practice of land carrier landing for pilots, the American and Japanese navies. In addition to developing its aircraft carrier, Japan conducted its largest amphibious training exercise since World War II in November 2019. Perfecting its ability to recapture island territory in the event of war. Japan has also stepped up cooperation space with the United States and are expected to conduct a major multinational cyber defense exercise later this year. Japan has an overseas base in Djibouti and has relaxed restrictions on the use of weapons abroad by the country's self-defense forces. Japan extends its base across the Ryukyu Islands by moving it closer to Taiwan and is increasing regional port visits and joint training exercises with the United States, Australia, India and other regional partners. Regional applications. Japan is positioning itself as a regional alternative to China for economic, political and security relations, although its pockets are not as deep as those of China. Tokyo relies on claims of better quality so much in terms of development rather than financing. Japan offers an alternative to financing China's Silk Road both alone and in collaboration with partners such as Australia and the United States. Japanese financing may require more careful consideration and planning on the part of recipients than Chinese financing, but it also comes with fewer political constraints, fewer fears of becoming a debt trap, and greater confidence in technical acumen and quality of infrastructure. Tokyo is also emerging as an alternative defense equipment supplier. Although primarily focused on maritime defense, Japan's application gives countries like the Philippines and Vietnam greater confidence in meeting China's challenges to their maritime territory, especially since Japan's dependence on the South China Sea represents a clear shared interest in ensuring open transit. Japan continues to strengthen its regional security relations both in concert with its relations of U.S. defense and independently, but also maintained the cooperation with China and Russia even as it considers China the main threat to regional security. This balancing exercise allows Japan to be both an essential part of American regional security and to avoid a Cold War break with China. Japan's re-emergence as a regional military power even without formally changing its constitution is widely viewed in a positive light as a local counterweight to China, although China and the Koreans, of course, see it differently. The slow revision of the role of the Japanese self-defense forces over the past decades, as well as the absence of territorial disputes in Japan other than those with China and Korea, have raised little clear concern about any new Japanese imperialism in Japan. Southeast Asia and none of South Asia and East Africa. Tokyo's tensions with South Korea, however, remain a major complication both for Japan's regional position and for trilateral relations between Japan and the United States and South Korea. Thank you for watching this video and see you soon for a new one.